I did not know Sergeant Dara Mbeki well enough to have earned the right to carry his helmet. I had been in country 11 days. He had been in country for 4 years, and he had been dead for 6 hours, and the helmet was sitting in the mud 3 meters from where he fell, and nobody was going to go back for it, so I did. That is the honest account of how it started. Not heroism, just a recruit who did not want to leave a dead man's kit in the dirt. We had pulled back to the secondary barracks at Outpost Farron, a long, low prefab structure with corrugated paneling and east-facing clear-story windows that threw pale morning light in long bands across the floor. There were 11 of us left from the forward element. Corporal Cyan Voss was the senior rank still breathing. She had 2 broken fingers on her left hand, set by herself with a strip of fabric torn from a sleeve, and she was using that hand just fine and not discussing it, which told you everything you needed to know about Corporal Voss. The Vorech had been on us since before dawn. I need to explain what the Vorech are, because the briefings we had been given before the posting were insufficient in every respect that mattered. The classification documents described them as a bioorganic distributed hive organism, which is accurate in the way that describing a fire as a rapid oxidation event is accurate. What the documents did not say, or did not say plainly enough for a recruit to understand, was that the Vorech advance by categorizing. Every surface, every object, every signal they encounter gets processed against a master taxonomy built over what the xenobiologists later estimated to be roughly 40,000 years of planetary scale consumption. If they can classify a thing, they dissolve it and move on. If they cannot, they halt. The halt is brief, 11 seconds on average. Then they find another angle, recategorize, and continue. We had learned this the hard way in the first hour. Corporal Voss had discovered that speaking in a non-standard dialect slowed the acoustic processing arm of the nearest Vorech tendril by roughly 4 seconds. Not enough to matter. Private Hank Brower had discovered that standing in front of a section of wall with an unusual compound stress fracture pattern bought 8 seconds before the tendril rerouted. Also not enough. People were figuring things out and dying immediately after. I was sitting against the interior east wall, next to the door we needed to get the wounded through, and I was holding Sergeant Mbeki's helmet in my lap because I had nowhere better to put it. And I was turning it over in my hands, the way you do with objects when you are frightened and trying not to show it, and that is when I saw the notation. It was on the inside of the liner. Someone had taken a black marking stylus, the kind you used for equipment tagging, and written 7 characters in a tight column on the gray foam padding near the rear adjustment strap. Not a standard unit designator, not a serial. The format was wrong for either. It was -49 Thorn-2R. The Thorn character is not in the standard equipment marking alphabet. It is an old typographic symbol, pre-digital, rarely reproduced in any database the Vorech would have had access to cataloging. The dash placement was also non-standard, a private spacing convention, the kind of shorthand a platoon develops over years when they are tired and far from home and need to track things quickly in conditions where official notation is a luxury. I had no idea what it meant. I said so quietly to Voss, who was 4 meters away and managing 2 wounded soldiers who could not stand on their own. She glanced at it. Mbeki's personal load tracking code, she said. He used it to mark gear that was his personally, not unit-issue. Thorn was his own character. He invented it. Nobody else used it. I looked at the notation. I looked at the east wall, where the morning light was coming in, and where, through the clear-story glass, I could see the leading edge of the Vorech mass moving toward the building along the outer compound wall. Gray-gold in the dawn light, slow and inevitable, like a tide. Voss, I said, how long to get the wounded through that door? She calculated without asking why. 45 seconds. Rennick can't put weight on either leg. 1 halt was 11 seconds. I stood up. What does that mean? Asked Private Cho from across the room, watching me hold up the helmet liner. She meant the notation. She was asking because I had lifted it like it was significant, and recruits learn quickly to watch for significance in objects that senior people handle with care. I don't know, I said. I'm going to read it aloud. I said this as the first tendril came through the east wall. Not through a crack or a window, through the corrugated paneling itself, dissolving it in a clean horizontal line at chest height as it categorized the composite material and removed it from consideration. Pale morning light flooded through the new opening like someone had pulled a curtain back. The tendril was a meter wide and moved at the pace of a slow walk. Everything it touched became part of it. I held up the helmet liner and read the 7 characters aloud, not performing it, just reading. The way you read a manifest or a parts number, flat, clear, each character given its own space. -49 Thorn-2 R. The tendril stopped. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like an accident or a coincidence or like I am embellishing the account to make it neater. I am not. The Vorech tendril stopped mid-motion the way a machine stops when it hits an unresolvable input, not withdrawing, not threatening, just completely still, waiting, running its process, looking for the category. The category did not exist. Thorn was not in any system it had ever consumed. The spacing convention was not in any system it had ever consumed. The combination of a non-standard glyph, a private dash spacing pattern, and a 2-character suffix that cross-referenced no known designator in 40,000 years of taxonomy produced exactly one result: no match. I counted in my head, 11 seconds. On 8 I started again. -49 Thorn-2 R. Another halt. The first tendril had not moved from its position. A second tendril approaching from the northern corner also stopped. They were sharing the unresolvable input across the local network, which meant the halt was propagating. Voss did not need to be told twice. She had Rennick under one arm and Cho under the other arm's direction before I finished the second reading. Brower had the third wounded soldier, Private Assant, who had taken a laceration across both calves and was moving on pure stubbornness, by the shoulder. I kept reading. I will not pretend I was calm. My voice was steady because I made it steady, which is not the same thing. I was 19 years old and I was standing 4 meters from a Vorech tendril in the morning light of a barracks on a world I had been on for 11 days, reading a dead sergeant's private inventory code off the inside of his helmet liner, and the only thing between the people behind me and a very efficient death was the fact that one man had once invented his own letter. I kept reading it. -49 Thorn-2 R. Voss had Rennick through the door on the 3rd cycle, Assant on the 4th. The door was 12 meters behind me. I did not look back. On the 6th cycle I heard the door open a second time in Cho's voice, low and tight. "Osai, now." I read the notation one more time, 7th cycle. My voice did not change. Then I stopped. The Vorech tendril resumed moving at the pace of a slow walk. I was already through the door. I pulled it shut behind me and stood in the exterior morning light with my back against the outside wall, and the helmet liner was still in my hands, and my hands were shaking considerably now that there was no longer any practical reason to keep them still. Voss was 10 meters ahead, not looking back, moving the wounded toward the extraction point. I looked down at the 7 characters in Mbicky's handwriting, black stylus on gray foam. His own letter, invented for his own reasons, in his own private shorthand. 40,000 years of accumulated alien taxonomy, and nobody in any of it had ever used a thorn. I did not know what it meant. I still do not know what it meant. Voss told me later when there was time that Mbicky used it to mark his personal water filtration kit, which he was particular about and which he did not want drawn from the general supply. It meant, "This is mine, do not touch." It had meant exactly that, as it turned out. I kept the helmet liner. It seemed right. It seemed like the least I could do for a man whose letter bought us 44 seconds and a door. The xenobiologist who debriefed us 3 days later wanted to know whether reading the notation aloud was necessary or whether holding it up would have sufficed. I could not tell them. I had not thought to test it. I said it was Mbeki's notation, his letter, his private convention, and that if they wanted to understand it, they should have kept him alive long enough to ask. They wrote that down. I do not know if anyone found a use for the information. I know it was enough. That morning in that light with that door, it was exactly enough.